probably see, I'll be up in heaven while y'all are rotting in hell.
Killings seem to have become a brutal fact of life. Tragically, they happen so often.
And I cannot go in the execution chamber and be executed under the devil.
Case number 91-304. I sentence you to death for the murder of Charles Humphreys.
This story has been sold and resold many times by police officers.
Come out because of the circumstances of what I was doing. Hitchhiking, hooking.
A troubled childhood. Aileen Wuornos, the infamous female serial slayer, was born on February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her early life was marred by a tumultuous upbringing that laid the foundation for darkness that would consume her in her later years. At just 6 months old, she experienced the most heart-wrenching abandonment of her teenage mother, leaving her in the care of her alcoholic grandmother and a cruel grandfather. Tragically, her grandfather subjected her to regular beatings, often using his belt buckle as a weapon. These brutal and violent acts inflicted upon her at such a tender age left indelible scars on her psyche. As if her early years were not filled with enough tragedy, Wuornos suffered another devastating blow when she was only 2 years old. Her father, who was already serving time in jail for the kidnapping and physical attack of a child, took his own life. This event not only robbed her of a parent, but also shattered any remaining fragments of stability and security in her life. The loss of her father under such circumstances undoubtedly left her with deep emotional wounds and a profound sense of abandonment. By the time Wuornos reached the age of 13, she had already endured unimaginable trauma. She had experienced physical attacks after physical attack, further exasperating the emotional turmoil she carried within her. At this young age, she also found herself pregnant, a consequence of the exploitation and vulnerability she had endured.
For forging checks, for car theft, for robbery, and for other charges.
Boy, I don't know about you. I'm telling you, man. No, I wasn't born bad.
She was a national figure, and there was national media that would converge on like the first day of her appearance in court.
So I didn't kill him every day, did I? Did I go out there every day and say, I'm gonna kill?
Many people involved in the case looked for a way to cash in. They would hire agents and they would try and negotiate book deals, movie deals.
It's making me get bitter, evil, angry that I've never been before in my life.
Faced with the unbearable circumstances of her life, she made the difficult decision to quit school. However, her already precarious situation took a turn for the worse when her abusive grandfather kicked her out of their home, leaving her to navigate the world alone and unguided at such a vulnerable age. In her desperate search for survival and stability, Wuornos turned to a life of bodywork. At just 15 years old, she embarked on a perilous journey, hitchhiking and engaging in bodywork along Florida's interstate highways. It was a dangerous and unpredictable existence where she had to navigate the perils and hazards of her trade to make ends meet. This harrowing period of her life exposed her to further violence, exploitation, and degradation as she struggled to find safety and security in an unforgiving world. Wuornos' survival skills were honed during these tumultuous years. She learned to be resourceful, cunning, and wary of the dangers that lurked around every corner. Her experiences on the highways of Florida exposed her to a range of individuals, some of whom were violent and predatory. To protect herself, she developed a hardened exterior and a willingness to use force if necessary. These survival mechanisms, born out of desperation, would later contribute to the dark path she would ultimately follow.
She may have been abused as a child, but it did not justify what she did to these men.
Okay, I cannot go in the execution chamber and die in the execution chamber as a liar.
Asked forgiveness. I am sorry that my acts of self-defense ended up in court like this. And probably see, I'll be up in heaven while y'all are rotting in hell. Those men were shot, just shot in self-defense. Boom, boom, boom. You know, they weren't cut up, they weren't sliced up, no OJ jazz.
The combination of a traumatic childhood, early exposure to violence and attack, and a life filled with struggle and danger undoubtedly had a profound impact on Wuornos. The scars left by her past experiences ran deep, shaping her outlook on the world and her interactions with others. While these factors do not excuse her later crimes, they provide context for understanding the complex and tragic journey that Aileen Wuornos undertook. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the devastating effects that a tumultuous upbringing and unchecked trauma can have on an individual's life. The Reign of Terror. As Wuornos reached the age of 33, the cumulative years of physical attacks, degradation, and trauma took their toll, and she descended into a horrific spree of slayings that would forever brand her as a serial slayer. The precise motivations behind her slayings continue to be a subject of debate and speculation. Wuornos claims self-defense as her justification, asserting that she shot her victims because they posed a direct threat to her safety and well-being. However, the state of Florida argued a different narrative, contending that Wuornos lured her victims by posing as a vulnerable damsel in distress, deceiving them before carrying out her acts. Regardless of the circumstances and motivations, Wuornos mercilessly took the lives of 7 men between 1989 and 1990. Her modus operandi involved a chilling method of luring middle-aged men into her vehicle, only to abruptly end their lives with a single fatal gunshot. It was a calculated and cold-blooded approach that left her victims with no chance of escape or self-defense. Contrary to popular misconceptions, it is important to note that her victims were not subjected to dismemberment or mutilation. Instead, Wuornos left their lifeless bodies where they fell, creating a haunting tableau that served as a grim testament to the depths of her rage and violence. The aftermath of each slaying brought a harrowing mix of emotions for Wuornos. There was likely a sense of relief as she believed she was eliminating potential threats and reclaiming power over her own life. However, the weight of her actions and the realization of the irreparable harm she had caused must have weighed heavily on her conscience. The cycle of violence she had been subjected to throughout her life had spiraled into a pattern that she herself perpetuated, forever altering the lives of her victims and their loved ones.
Apparently, there'd never been a female serial killer.
And I cannot go in the execution chamber and be executed under the devil.
I am sorry for all the pain that my actions have caused. I am prepared to die if you say it is necessary.
Killings seem to have become a brutal fact of life. Tragically, they happen so often.
They definitely wanted Mallory dead.
And he said I did the most horrendous crime in the whole wide world.
Wuornos' spree of slayings eventually came to an end when she was arrested in 1991. She was subsequently convicted and given capital punishment for her crimes. Throughout the legal proceedings, her troubled past and the trauma she endured were brought to light, providing glimpses into the factors that shaped her dark path. The complex web of psychological, emotional, and societal influences that contributed to Wuornos' descent into violence cannot be overlooked, although they do not absolve her of the responsibility of her actions. Aileen Wuornos remains a controversial figure, sparking discussions about the nature of her crimes, capital punishment, and the systemic failures that allowed her life to unravel to such an extreme degree. Her story serves as a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences of a life marred by attack, neglect, and trauma. It is a chilling testament to the fact that the human psyche can be shaped and driven to extreme acts under the weight of unbearable circumstances. The legal battles. Following her arrest, Aileen Wuornos found herself thrust into the eye of a media storm, becoming the subject of intense scrutiny and fascination. Lawyers, psychologists, and individuals seeking personal gain all converged on her case, contributing to a macabre spectacle surrounding her impending date with the electric chair. Amidst this chaotic environment, Wuornos' legal defense team, including her lawyers and her adoptive mother, navigated a precarious dance, preparing to defend her against the charges of slaying. Throughout her trial, Wuornos exhibited a complex and often contradictory demeanor. She vacillated between confessing to the slayings and pleading self-defense, leaving her defense team in a challenging position.
And somebody called her a female serial killer, America's first one.
I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery.
Case number 91-304. I sentence you to death for the murder of Charles Humphreys.
Horrendous crime. Why didn't I shoot them between the eyes, cut their penis off, stick it in their mouth, do all kinds of gross stuff.
This story has been sold and resold many times by police officers.
I'm being really straight up about everything. There's no self-defense.
The shifting nature of her statements created a sense of uncertainty and made it difficult to construct a consistent defense strategy. Wuornos' confessions offered a glimpse into her troubled psyche, where a mix of guilt, self-preservation, and a desperate desire for understanding seemed to intertwine. Her confessions, while chilling in their content, also hinted at the psychological torment she experienced as a result of her traumatic past. In the midst of the legal proceedings, another key figure emerged: Tyria Moore, Wuornos' former lover. Initially, Moore stood by Wuornos, supporting her claims of self-defense. However, as the trial progressed, Moore became the star witness for the prosecution, delivering damning testimony against Wuornos. This shift in loyalty complicated the case further, adding a dimension of betrayal and relational strife. The dynamics between Wuornos and Moore were entangled in a complex web of emotions, trust, and manipulation, making it difficult for the court and observers to decipher the truth amidst their conflicting narratives. The trial took an even more sinister turn when allegations of a conspiracy emerged. It was revealed that Moore and the police had attempted to sell the movie rights to Wuornos' life story, raising questions about the integrity of those involved in the investigation and legal proceedings.
And somebody called her a female serial killer, America's first one.
I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery.
Case number 91-304. I sentence you to death for the murder of Charles Humphreys.
Horrendous crime. Why didn't I shoot them between the eyes, cut their penis off, stick it in their mouth, do all kinds of gross stuff?
This story has been sold and resold many times by police officers.
I'm being really straight up about everything. There's no self-defense.
The revelation of this shocking conspiracy triggered public outrage and fueled skepticism regarding the fairness and objectivity of the trial. The focus shifted from a search for justice to the exploitation and commodification of Wuornos' story, leaving many to question the motivations and ethics of those involved. The media frenzy that surrounded Wuornos' case exasperated the complexity and sensationalism of the trial. Journalists and tabloids clamored for every detail, often painting Wuornos as a monstrous figure devoid of humanity. The intense public interest in her story only served to heighten the spectacle and further distort the truth. The narrative surrounding Wuornos became a mix of fact and fiction, creating a distorted image of a deeply troubled woman whose actions defied easy explanation. In attempting to understand the intricate web of motivations and circumstances surrounding Wuornos' case, it is essential to acknowledge the complexities and uncertainties that shrouded the trial. While her confessions hinted at a deeply disturbed psyche, they also bore the marks of a troubled individual grappling with her own past and the harsh realities of her present. The involvement of Moore and the subsequent conspiracy underscored the ethical challenges and moral ambiguities that can arise within the legal system. The case of Aileen Wuornos serves as a stark reminder of the ways in which individuals can be exploited, sensationalized, and manipulated in the pursuit of profit and media attention. Her story became a morbid fascination for many, overshadowing the underlying psychological and societal issues that contributed to her actions. It is crucial to remember that behind the sensational headlines and media circus was a deeply damaged individual whose traumatic past and troubled relationships played a significant role into her descent into violence. Aileen Wuornos' trial was marred by a media frenzy, the involvement of opportunistic individuals, and a complex interplay of shifting loyalties and questionable motives. The macabre dance between her defense team, the prosecution, and the media created a distorted narrative surrounding her case, making it challenging to discern the truth amidst the chaos. The involvement of Tyria Moore in the conspiracy to sell the movie rights to Wuornos' story further added to the complexity and ethical challenges surrounding the trial. The sensationalism and exploitation that engulfed Wuornos' story overshadowed the underlying psychological factors and societal issues that contributed to her actions, reinforcing the need for a more nuanced understanding of the complex tapestry of darkness that surrounds her.
Case number 91-112, Citrus County case number. I sentence you to death for the murder of David Spears.
On to plead out, that's what I'm all about. Just sign.
Aileen Wuornos would never know her father. He was a handyman, but he was also a child molester.
Come out because of the circumstances of what I was doing. Hitchhiking, hooking,
got into prostitution when she was around 13, and she would do it for cigarettes or beer.
Tyra was doing a lot of beer drinking and stuff. She wanted to go out all the time, so she was burning up the money I was making.
Psychological turmoil. Aileen Wuornos was a subject of great interest to psychologists who sought to unravel the intricate web of factors that contributed to her violent acts. Through their examinations, a haunting portrait of a deeply damaged individual emerged, revealing the lasting impact of a traumatic past marked by abandonment, attack, and physical attack. It became evident that Wuornos' troubled childhood experiences and the horror she endured played a pivotal role in pushing her over the edge, leading to her descent into violence. Furthermore, her life on the fringes of society as a body worker served to exacerbate her already fragile psychological state, further entangling her in a web of psychological turmoil. The story of Wuornos begins with a childhood marked by abandonment and attack. Born on February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan, she was raised by her teenage mother and her grandparents. However, her mother abandoned her at a young age, leaving Wuornos to grow up in a tumultuous environment. Her grandfather was reportedly an alcoholic who was prone to violent outbursts, while her grandmother struggled with mental health issues. The lack of stability and nurturing parental figures undoubtedly left a profound impact on Wuornos' developing psyche, creating an emotional void that would haunt her for the rest of her life. As Wuornos entered adolescence, her life took a darker turn. She became a victim of physical attack, an experience that would leave an indelible imprint on her psyche. The trauma of such heinous acts can shatter a person's sense of self, leading to profound feelings of powerlessness, anger, and self-hatred. In Wuornos' case, these feelings may have laid the groundwork for her later acts of violence, serving as a distorted means of reclaiming control and seeking revenge against a world that had treated her so brutally. Struggling to cope with her traumatic past, Wuornos found herself spiraling down a path of self-destruction. She turned to a life of survival and exploitation, working as a body worker to make ends meet. This existence on the fringes of society only served to compound her psychological turmoil. Body workers often face extreme levels of stigmatization and marginalization, enduring further attack and exploitation at the hands of clients, pimps, and even law enforcement. The constant threat to her physical and emotional well-being undoubtedly exacerbated Wuornos' already fragile mental state, deepening her feelings of rage, mistrust, and isolation.
You know, we believe in the Holy Spirit, and so we feel it was Him prompting us that this person really needed help.
And he really did throw the kids out because he couldn't take care of the house any longer. He lost his wife and all that.
Because I have to put them in first on this whole thing. I'm really sorry for
When she was 2, her father committed suicide in jail, where he was doing time for kidnapping and raping a child.
Of course, pick up a lone woman because they think the woman is willing to have sex with them, and that's why they're on the highway.
Yeah, Richard Mallory was not self-defense. Richard Mallory I killed and
when her grandfather kicked her out of home, Lee Wuornos' life on the road began.
Just as quickly as Wuornos and Fell got married, it all began to fall apart.
The combination of Wuornos' troubled upbringing, a life marked by survival and exploitation, and the weight of her crimes created a complex tapestry of darkness that surrounded her. Psychologists attempted to understand the motivations behind her violent acts, seeking to unravel the enigma that was Aileen Wuornos. Yet, despite their efforts, a definitive explanation remained elusive. It is essential to recognize that human behavior is not determined by a single factor, but rather influenced by a multitude of complex interplays between biology, psychology, and social circumstances. In Wuornos' case, her traumatic childhood experiences undoubtedly played a significant role in shaping her psychological makeup. The chronic attack, abandonment, and physical attack she endured eroded her sense of self-worth and left her emotionally scarred. Her subsequent life as a body worker only reinforced her feelings of being trapped and exploited, perpetuating a cycle of trauma and despair.
I needed his wheels to move the stuff, and he had the right amount of money I needed to move into the apartment, so. I wasn't too high priced, so I could keep the customers satisfied.
You come in here at a decent hour.
I can do what the hell I want to!
That was pretty convincing.
Was it? That's
Well, I thought so.
God, that's sad.
The killings all began like this. A middle-aged man pulled over to pick up Lee Wuornos.
Eileen pawned the diamond ring, and Louis Fell disappeared.
Nick, this is the last time I'm going to say it. You have to kill Eileen Wuornos because she'll kill again.
The state of Florida maintains she tricked her victims by posing as a damsel in distress.
Law enforcement cover-up. In her final interview, Eileen Wuornos made shocking claims that raised disturbing questions about the integrity of the criminal justice system. Wuornos asserted that law enforcement knew her identity as a slayer after the demise of Richard Mallory, but intentionally allowed her to continue her slaying spree, effectively turning her into a serial slayer. She firmly believed that her fingerprints were intentionally left at crime scenes, and the police concealed this information to ensure she would keep slaying. Wuornos adamantly denied being a professional serial slayer and stated that her actions were neither special nor meticulously planned. If Wuornos' claims are indeed true, they imply a severe dereliction of duty and a shocking betrayal of public trust by law enforcement officials. The idea that authorities knowingly allowed a slayer to remain at large solely to build a case against her is deeply unsettling. It raises troubling questions about the priorities and ethics of those responsible for investigating and preventing crime. The case of Eileen Wuornos has already garnered significant attention due to her status as a female serial slayer, a rarity in the annals of criminal history. Her troubled past and tragic upbringing have fascinated the public, who have attempted to understand the factors that contributed to her descent into violence. Wuornos' claims in her final interview add another layer of complexity to her case and invite further scrutiny into the actions of those involved in investigating her crimes. It is essential to approach Wuornos' assertions with a critical lens, recognizing that she was a convicted slayer with a history of mental health issues.
Being really straight up about everything. There's no self-defense. I'm really sorry what happened about everything.
All re-electional purposes. This is not for nothing but get you guys re-elected. And this is a bunch of bullshit.
Cruising all over the United States of America and stuff. And so, learning how to be a hooker as a hitchhiker. To me, this world is nothing but evil, and all of us are full of evil one way or another.
However, her claims cannot be dismissed outright without a thorough investigation. The criminal justice system is built on principles of accountability, fairness, and the pursuit of truth. If any evidence exists to support Wuornos' allegations, it is imperative to uncover it to ensure that justice is served and the public's trust in law enforcement is maintained. The potential ramifications of Wuornos' claims go beyond her individual case. They raise broader questions about the integrity of the criminal justice system and the balance between the pursuit of justice and the protection of public safety. If law enforcement intentionally allowed Wuornos to continue slaying, it not only demonstrates a failure to prevent further loss of life, but also undermines the fundamental principles of law enforcement's duty to protect the public. In conclusion, Eileen Wuornos' claims in her final interview have brought to light deeply troubling questions about the integrity of the criminal justice system. The allegation that law enforcement allowed a known slayer to continue her slaying spree is deeply unsettling and demands further investigation and scrutiny. Torture and incarceration. During her final interview, Eileen Wuornos made alarming claims regarding the alleged torture and attack she endured while incarcerated. Wuornos described a disturbing ordeal involving the use of sonic pressure on her head since 1997, along with insinuations of an artificial intelligence presence in her cell. She suggested that her writing activities were being monitored and suppressed, as any attempts to write resulted in an intensification of the pressure she experienced. These allegations by Wuornos shed light on the potential for technological manipulation and surveillance within correctional facilities. If her claims were substantiated, it would have exposed a grave violation of human rights and highlighted systemic failures within the prison system. The use of sonic pressure and potential interference with an inmate's activities not only constituted physical and psychological torture, but also infringed upon their right to privacy and dignity. The concept of sonic pressure, also known as sonic or acoustic weapons, involves the use of sound waves to cause pain, discomfort, and psychological distress.
They had the intercom on in the room, and they kept lying that it wasn't on, and they were using sonic pressure on my head since 1997.
Lee had a long history of neglect and sexual abuse. Lee was born in 1956 in Troy, Michigan.
It was them or me. I am sorry for all the pain that my actions have caused.
While primarily used in crowd control or military operations, Wuornos' assertion that she experienced this type of pressure in her cell suggested an alarming misuse of such technology within the prison system. Sonic pressure can have severe and long-lasting effects on an individual's mental and physical well-being, making it a highly unethical practice if confirmed. Wuornos' implication that her writing was being monitored and suppressed added another dimension to her claims. If an artificial intelligence system had indeed been implemented to monitor her activities, it would have raised significant concerns regarding privacy and surveillance in correctional facilities. Inmates have the right to express themselves through various means, including writing, and any interference with this fundamental right would have been a clear violation. It was crucial to thoroughly investigate these allegations and hold accountable those responsible for any such violations. Furthermore, Wuornos mentioned the presence of a large satellite on the prison compound, which she suspected may have been connected to the television or mirror in her cell. She recalled an electrician's comment about the mirror resembling a computer. While these details may have appeared speculative, they underline the need for transparency and oversight in correctional institutions regarding the implementation of technology. If there was any truth to Wuornos' claims, it pointed to a system that was failing in its duty to provide a safe and humane environment for those in custody. Correctional facilities had the responsibility to uphold the rights of inmates, ensuring their physical and mental well-being while respecting their privacy and dignity. Any violations of these rights undermined the legitimacy and effectiveness of the criminal justice system as a whole. To address these alarming allegations, it was imperative to conduct a thorough investigation that involved independent experts and human rights organizations. The investigation should have examined the conditions of Wuornos' confinement, including any potential use of sonic pressure or other forms of torture, as well as the presence and misuse of any technological systems. Additionally, comprehensive reviews and reforms of prison protocols and oversight mechanisms should have been undertaken to prevent similar attacks from occurring in the future. Aileen Wuornos' allegations of torture and attack during her time in incarceration raised serious concerns about human rights violations within the prison system. The alleged use of sonic pressure, potential technological interference, and infringement upon her right to privacy and dignity underscore the urgent need for a thorough investigation and comprehensive reforms. The well-being and safety of individuals in custody should always be paramount, and addressing these issues was crucial to ensure the fair and ethical treatment of all inmates.
It was crushing my head, and they were using sonic pressure continually.
I'll appoint the Public Defender's Office to handle the appeal. There's one other thing that I want to say that I think needs to be said.
Pulled me through. They all said I was going to die. They beat my husband. He was out in Las Vegas at a convention.
And I was raped. I hope you get raped.
That's not the way the jurors...
Wuornos' final plea. In her final interview, Aileen Wuornos expressed a mix of defiance, anger, and resignation. She firmly believed that her actions were a response to the threats and dangers she faced while working as a hitchhiking body worker. While she refrained from explicitly stating whether her slayings were in self-defense or premeditated, she insisted that she saved people from harm and played a role in cleaning the streets. Wuornos' intense frustration and bitterness were directed towards society, the justice system, and those who had profited from her story. She accused society of railroading her and sabotaging her life, preventing her from receiving a fair trial or investigation. She also expressed her deep disappointment with the exploitation of her story for financial gain, while her own humanity and the truth behind her actions were disregarded. In her final plea, Wuornos called for accountability and justice. She demanded that her story be heard without distortion or manipulation. Despite her troubled past and the heinous crimes she committed, Wuornos pleaded for her experiences and the truth to be acknowledged and taken seriously. Her final words served as a haunting reminder of the complexities of human nature the failures of the justice system, and the responsibility of society to treat all individuals with fairness and humanity. Aileen Wuornos' final interview provided a glimpse into her perspective on the events that unfolded in her life. Her claims of law enforcement cover-up, torture, and incarceration, and reflections on her legacy raised important questions about the integrity of the criminal justice system, the treatment of prisoners, and the portrayal of individuals in the public eye. While Wuornos' crimes were undeniably horrific, her interview invited us to critically examine the societal factors that may have contributed to her actions and the systemic failures that allowed her crimes to continue. It was crucial to approach these claims with skepticism and conduct thorough investigations to ascertain the truth. If Wuornos' allegations were substantiated, it would have been vital to address the issues she raised, such as law enforcement misconduct, attack and incarceration, and the exploitation of individuals' stories. Ultimately, Wuornos' final plea reminded us of the need for fairness, justice, and compassion in our criminal justice system, even when confronting the most difficult and disturbing cases. In response to Wuornos' interview, it was essential for authorities and the public to carefully consider her claims and conduct a comprehensive investigation. While her perspective and credibility may have been subject to scrutiny due to her criminal history, it was crucial to ensure a fair and impartial examination of the allegations she made. This would have involved gathering evidence, interviewing relevant individuals, and thoroughly reviewing her case to determine the validity of her statements. Additionally, Wuornos' interview highlighted broader issues within the criminal justice system that needed to be addressed. The allegations of a law enforcement cover-up and a lack of a fair trial pointed to potential systemic failures that required thorough scrutiny and potential reforms. It was necessary to review the procedures and protocols followed during Wuornos' arrest, trial, and incarceration to identify any instances of misconduct or negligence. Furthermore, Wuornos' claims of torture and attack while in custody raised significant concerns about the treatment of prisoners and the conditions within correctional facilities. It was crucial to investigate these allegations thoroughly, ensuring the safety and well-being of inmates and holding accountable any individuals responsible for mistreatment or violation of human rights. Lastly, Wuornos' reflections on the exploitation of her story and the disregard for her humanity reminded society of the ethical responsibility to treat individuals with dignity, even in the face of their heinous crimes. It was imperative to recognize the complexities of human nature and the need for a fair and balanced approach to justice that considers the individual circumstances and underlying factors that may contribute to criminal behavior. In conclusion, Aileen Wuornos' final interview presented a complex and troubling perspective on her life and crimes. While her claims and assertions needed to be thoroughly investigated, her words prompted important discussions about the criminal justice system, prisoner treatment, and the portrayal of individuals in the public eye. By examining her case and addressing the issues she raised, society had the opportunity to learn from her experiences and work towards a more fair and compassionate approach to justice. Last meal. In a surprising and perhaps fitting choice, Aileen Wuornos' last meal request before her ending was a simple cup of coffee. This seemingly ordinary beverage held a significant meaning and symbolism in the context of her final moments. Coffee, with its rich aroma and invigorating properties, has long been associated with comfort, solace, and sense of normalcy. For Wuornos, who had lived a tumultuous and troubled life, this choice may have represented a desire for a momentary respite from her grim reality. It was a familiar and familiarizing act, a simple pleasure that connected her to the outside world and offered a brief escape from the weight of her impending fate. While the request for coffee as her last meal may appear unremarkable compared to more elaborate or indulgent choices made by others, it underscores the profound significance of finding solace in small comforts, even in the face of unimaginable circumstances. In that final cup of coffee, Wuornos sought a fleeting moment of normalcy and human connection, finding a brief sense of solace before her journey came to an end. The final days and legacy. In the final days of her life, Aileen Wuornos made a fateful decision that would seal her tragic fate. She chose to plead no contest to the remaining charges against her, effectively accepting the capital punishment. At this point, Wuornos had grown weary of the intense media spotlight and the various narratives that had been woven around her. She rejected the simplistic labels of a man-hating or lesbian slayer that had been imposed upon her, understanding that they failed to capture the complex and deeply troubled individual that she was. In her own tortured way, Wuornos sought a release from the torment she had endured, whether it be at the hands of her victims or the relentless public scrutiny she faced. On October 9, 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection, making her the first woman to be executed in Florida since 1848. Her demise marked the tragic end of a life defined by pain, violence, and psychological turmoil. However, even in demise, Wuornos' story continues to captivate the public's imagination, sparking debates and raising important questions about the interplay between nature and nurture, the influence of traumatic experiences on one's actions, and the enigmatic depths of the human mind. The story of Aileen Wuornos forces us to confront the complexities of human behavior. It challenges our understanding of the motivations behind violent acts and urges us to examine the factors that contribute to the creation of a serial slayer. While her traumatic past undoubtedly played a significant role in shaping her psychological landscape, it is important to recognize that not all individuals who experience similar hardships resort to violence. Wuornos' life serves as a chilling reminder of the intricate interplay between nature and nurture, individual agency, and the societal factors that shape our behavior. Wuornos' tragic journey raises important questions about the devastating consequences of childhood trauma. The abandonment, attack, and physical attack she experienced as a young girl left an indelible mark on her psyche. Such traumatic experiences can fracture a person's sense of self and breed a deep-seated anger, mistrust, and self-destructive tendencies. Wuornos' desperate acts of violence may have been a twisted attempt to regain control over her life, seeking revenge against a world that had treated her with cruelty and indifference. It is a somber reminder of the urgent need for society to address the root causes of childhood trauma and to provide support systems for those who have suffered from such experiences. The ending of Aileen Wuornos also sheds light on the flaws within the criminal justice system. Her case was tainted by sensationalism, media manipulation, and questionable ethical conduct. The intense media frenzy surrounding her story created an atmosphere of spectacle and distorted the pursuit of justice. The involvement of individuals seeking personal gain and the conspiracy to sell the movie rights to Wuornos' life story cast doubt on the integrity of those involved in the investigation and legal proceedings.
What you want to see? Do you want the tapes? Do you want everything, the new stuff? All?
The cops knew who I was. After Richard Mallory died, I left prints everywhere, and they covered it up.
Instead, talking about dropping her public defenders and hiring private attorney Steve Glazer.
Father committed suicide in prison. He was serving a sentence for sodomizing a 7-year-old child.
That really hurt really bad because he tore me up for a while.
These revelations ignited public outrage and raised concerns about the fairness and objectivity of the trial. Wuornos' story is a haunting reminder of the fragility of the line that separates victims from perpetrators in a society riddled with violence and pain. She was both a victim of a traumatic past and a perpetrator of heinous crimes. Her life serves as a stark example of how deeply intertwined victimhood and perpetration can be, highlighting the complex nature of human behavior and the difficult task of categorizing individuals neatly into one role or the other. The legacy of Aileen Wuornos continues to fuel important discussions surrounding mental health, criminal justice, and the societal responsibility to support and rehabilitate individuals who have fallen through the cracks. Her story prompts us to examine the failures of our systems, to address the underlying issues that contribute to cycles of violence and trauma, and to seek a deeper understanding of the human condition. In conclusion, the tragic life and crimes of Aileen Wuornos present a chilling and complex narrative. Her decision to plead no contest to the remaining slaying charges, leading to her ending, marked the culmination of a life filled with pain, violence, and psychological turmoil. Her story captivates the public's imagination and provokes profound debates about the complexities of human behavior, the lasting impact of childhood trauma, and the flaws within the criminal justice system. Wuornos' life serves as a reminder of the urgent need to address the root causes of violence, to provide support for individuals who have experienced trauma, and to strive for a more compassionate and just society. And that's all for this video today, folks. We'll see you next time at the next one.